Hello and welcome to the Next 100 Days podcast. My name is Graham Arrowsmith.
And my name's Kevin Appleby. So Graham, today we're going to talk corporate escape again. And we're going to talk corporate escape from corporate treasury.
Corporate treasury. Well, that I think I've got an idea what that means, but we have got an expert with us who will tell us exactly what it means. And it's Jennifer Pearson, but you do go by Jen. Jen, welcome to the Next 100 Days podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
What is a corporate treasurer?
It's a good question. A corporate treasurer is someone who manages the financial risk of the business. So I describe it as the in-house bank. They look after the cash, forecast the cash, foreign exchange, debt, all that sort of stuff that the bank does, we would do in-house.
Oh, okay. Right. That sounds quite complicated. Is that something that you're familiar with, Kevin?
Really an area I've done a lot of work in. And I've never really been in a position of directly managing the cash for the business. And back when I was in big corporate in ICI, well, cash was something that head office down in London sorted out, and the businesses just literally had an open checkbook to do what they wanted within limits of the budget. But corporate treasury, and in big organizations where you've got lots of foreign exchange going on and transactions in different currencies, it becomes a very, very important subject. So specialist services are really necessary in that area.
So you take over this, you become this bank. I mean, everybody hates banks, don't they, Jen? I mean, why would you want to be hated by everybody around you?
Well, I guess we deal with the banks, so you don't have to.
That's a good answer. No, that's a good answer. No, seriously, though, I mean, I recently have had to delve into the foreign exchange services, and I found it a little bit sort of intimidating, especially dealing with the bank. It was like sludge, and they eventually told me how much they were going to charge, and I said, how much? And I found something else that did the job, a service that I'd used before that effectively transferred some money to, in this case, it was to India. And I found that really easy to do through this other service, but the banks seem to want to make it really quite difficult. Is that your experience?
Yeah, I think a big part of being a treasury is who you know. You have your trusted partners who they have good services, which they are easy to work with. And I think something that I really believe in is being able to understand what you're doing. And sometimes if you go to a big bank, they might try and overcomplicate things, make you feel confused. And that's not how treasury should be. You should never do anything that you feel isn't right or you're not completely comfortable with. So a big part of it is having the right people there, the right advisors who you can speak to at the end of the phone, who will explain things to you before you dive in and do sort of, like you say, any FX trade or any other type of derivative trade.
I'm sorry, Kevin. I was just picking up on FX. And how would you know it's the right trade? Because at the moment you're paying the money in, they'll make the trade at that point. So, prices go up and down. So you just have to pay it when you have to pay it, and that'll be the price that somebody else receives. So it's just I'm studying anxiety in the context of marketing at the moment. Just one of the things that I'm doing, and that's probably because it's one of those things that it's the easiest thing to fix on a web page. I'm actually I would like to praise your website. And if anybody wants to find out more about Jen, all they have to do is go to treasuryedge.co.uk. And there's a lot there that I like, and there's some things that I would probably advise maybe have a look at. But at the end of the day, I really do like what you're doing there. Going back to the point, the anxiety of doing something where you're transferring real money from one place to another, that for me is an opportunity for those people in the middle and for you to actually, shall we say, lower the level of anxiety.
Yes, I would agree. And thank you for the feedback on the website. I'd say it's very much work in progress, as you can probably tell when you look at it.
Yeah.
But on the FX and on the money transfers, I think the situation that you described, where you have to take the market rate as it
Yeah.
is the situation that we would try to avoid. So,
Right.
where we would preempt that a business would need a certain amount of money over the next few months. And instead of just accepting the market rate on that day,
Yeah.
we actually plan for that in advance. And we call it hedging, but it's really just an insurance policy against the market movements. And, you know, for me, it's not about watching the markets and trying to get the best possible rate, because that never works. There's so many studies that say random generated programs versus the best economist and forecaster in the world, there's really no difference in the outcome. So it's very much taken the human element out of it and saying, I know I'm going to need this money in India in 6 months.
Yeah.
And I'm going to buy it then, maybe in chunks. And that's it. There's not, I'm watching the rate today, it's gone down. It's taking that decision out of it, because it just doesn't work.
I see. Oh, that's good advice. That's really good advice. And this is a sort of thing that, I mean, this is one small part of what you do, but if you were to walk into, and I know that on your website that you've segmented 3 different sort of sizes of businesses that you might be able to help, and they're kind of the ones, employees 1 to 50, which you're in startup mode and so forth, and then the 50 to 150, which is a bit bigger, you medium, sort of small to medium sized business, and then over 150, which is still small to medium, but going towards the medium. So that's your market, and you offer different service levels for each of those segments, which is very clever. But if you were to walk into the guy who's got, I don't know, the first 6 employees, and they really recognize that cash is not their thing. I'm developing a product here. I'm developing a new service, might be with AI or whatever. But the point is, you come in and you sort out, if you like, the back end cash movements. What is it? Do you almost like have a checklist that you go through?
Yes and no. So often when I'm asked to go into a business, like I say, at the moment I specialize in startups and scale ups, which is why it's small employee count. It is very much driven by their business model. So the standard would be, which banks do they use? Are they a good fit for their business? Do they have a cash forecast? So if they are pre-profit, as a lot of these companies are, we might start to track cash burn and what the cash runway will be. And then the next will be, do they have any debt? Do they have any foreign exchange risk? And, all the other types of financial risk that could potentially come with it. Another one might be payments. So a lot of the companies that I work with have quite complicated payment solutions. So we might look at technology partners, and, using my experience with other clients, I can say, I think they're quite good to work with. I think they're maybe not a good fit for you. And depending on the complexity, it might be a very short term. You can go away and make these changes, or, I can do them for you, and, we'll do it as a bit of a joint venture together.
It's interesting. I mean, I've had some experience of dealing with different payment partners, and Kevin, I use QuickBooks in my small business, and basically, when somebody pays me by PayPal, I break out in sweats, and I'm thinking, what the hell have I done? This organization basically just rips me off by a little bit. I know they're providing a service, but at the end of the day, it just feels like I'm getting, why don't you just use backs? For me, it's like, I don't know, somewhere along the line, I pressed the wrong button. But that type of thing is something you probably fix for people, I guess.
Yeah, I guess the in my world, that maybe those type of smaller problems don't warrant having a treasury consultant, but definitely if there was on a larger scale, say they're making hundreds of thousands of payments and they're using PayPal, that seems like quite an expensive solution.
Yeah. So, I mean, Kevin, you obviously know Jen, and how did you come across Jen? How, I mean, presumably you met her at some place.
Jen started asking me lots of questions about how do you set up an online business, having moved out of big corporate and set up on her own. So, Jen, tell us a little bit about that. Where were you before Treasury Edge, and what was it that made you do this?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think I've worked in a lot of big corporates, spent a lot of time at Procter & Gamble, Norton Rose Fulbright, Johnson Matthey, some big companies. And then in my last job at Free Trade, which is a retail stockbroker, my boss suggested that I go out on my own and set up treasuries for lots of businesses. And although at the time I thought that was a bit of a crazy suggestion, given that I was part of his team, I knew I always wanted to be self-employed. And it just took that nugget of his idea. And when I went on maternity leave, I had a bit of time to start planning how it could work and sign my first client. So when I resigned from my job, I already had a pipeline of work to go into. And I've never looked back.
Have you thanked him for his advice?
I did buy him a dinner. Yeah.
Oh, that's yeah. McDonald's always comes in handy, doesn't it? Really, yeah. It's one of those things, though, isn't it, that something in your life happens, and that's quite an odd conversation because you're part of his team and so forth. But he's got your best interests at heart, hasn't he? It must have been quite a good manager in some ways. Or the alternative way of looking at it is he wanted rid of you. So I mean, hey, get her out that way. But I doubt that's the case. But you obviously took that on board. That must have been at that moment. You must have been back to anxiety again. You must have been a bit anxious. What's going to happen? What if that paycheck coming in?
Yeah, I mean, exactly that. And I think anyone who's had a child will know that all of your living expenses double overnight. You've got nursery fees, which are as much as your mortgage, and there's just a lot more pressure than there was before. But I think in hindsight, I always operated in my roles as if I was running my own business anyway. I was always reaching out to other teams, taking on more work, investing in technology, always acting beyond my role. And always told my reports and team to do the same, act like your role is your own business and you'll be successful. So it didn't seem like such a huge leap. The only thing that is a surprise, which I guess you mentioned before with QuickBooks, is all the behind the scenes stuff that you have to do. I mean, I'm really big on LinkedIn. Like I say, I have the website now, which is, subpar to say the best. But there's all these extra skills that you have to learn to run your business, and you can't just be good at treasury, basically.
No, that's just the deliverable. The business itself there's a lot more parts to it, as I'm sure Kevin will discuss. But for me, you started really well. I think honestly, genuinely, if you're into treasury and you need somebody to look after your business, particularly if you're in that sort of early stage, then you really must beat a very fast path to Jen at Treasury Edge. Now, big question for you: where do you see Treasury Edge in, say, I don't know, 5 years?
So Treasury Edge is sort of half of what I do. The other half is, as Kevin mentioned, is my Treasury community, which is Treasurers of Tomorrow. And I would really love in 5 years if I could split my time evenly between the two, where I'll always love to be in Treasury and be working in that field. And I speak to other sort of experts or consultants or whatever you want to call them, and they say they can't wait to stop doing the client work. They want a team of people who does that, and they just oversee them. And I don't see that in my future, although obviously I will have a team, but it's not. I still want to do the work and be involved implementing systems and solutions and stuff like that. But the other part of me is that Treasury is, it's a really exciting space, and we need to attract young, new talent into our industry to help to make it continue. And the Treasurers of Tomorrow community is for those people to meet and grow and develop together, and hopefully, make them sticky in Treasury, so they don't, every Treasury in every company is different. And what my worry is that people go into one role and they think, oh, I've done it all. Like, I've done Treasury. I've heard people say that a few times, and that's just not true. If you go into another space, you could be on an FX desk, you could be a debt specialist, and there's loads of different areas. And I think by exposing these youngsters to each other and to that, they'll see the whole world of Treasury.
It is a world then. Do you see this? And it's not, because, from my point of view, having come across you fairly recently, then basically it's a sort of, I was thinking, well, I've heard of treasurers, and I kind of get that it's to do with financial control, and I kind of get to do that it's to do with cash control. But that's a whole world, is it?
Oh, definitely. And we're so lucky because London is the centre of this world, 100%. Yeah. So it's every treasurer in their profession knows all the others, but it's like I used to work in a law firm and knew all the treasurers and all the law firms, because the banks bring you together. You all use the same bank partners. Yeah. And it's just the youngsters that you have to reach a certain point in your career when you get the opportunity to go to those nice events. You get your Wimbledon tickets and all the nice perks of being in Treasury. But it's that if they stay in the role long enough to meet their cohort.
I get why people are attracted to you, but the truth is, I don't understand why people in London have grown fond of you, because you're clearly not from there. I would say you're nearer Kevin's homeland than there. Whereabouts do you originate from, Jen?
I am from Sunderland, which is why I feel like I have quite a good affiliation with Kevin.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's on one
this
level.
Is the point that Graham switches off and remembers the 1973 Cup final.
Oh, give over. No, I did. Yeah, but but the place itself on the coast, lovely place, get a decent bit of sun. It's a really lovely place. I mean, but you presumably you miss a bit of Sunderland. Your family still there?
Yes, yeah, I do. I do definitely miss the beach, and sometimes consider what it would be like to have a life there. I don't know about the sun. I don't think it gets that much sun.
No, I've got to say, I have been there during the summer, but nonetheless, it's not a bad place. Just rubbish football team, but no, nonetheless, you now obviously based in, I think you said, is it Southwest London that you're based in? So yeah, so obviously, like you said, London, very, very much the heart of Treasury. All these treasurers, then, they have a community of interest, but is there a handful of things that your treasurers of tomorrow can address that will, to use an AI phrase, elevate their careers?
Yes, I think like a lot of roles, Treasury has two parts to it. It's very technical in some respects, and being able to teach youngsters the technical skills they need to take on more work, alleviate the pressure from their manager to train them so they can add value to the business that way. But the other half is obviously the soft skills. So there's a lot of stakeholder management in Treasury. You have to speak to your banks, speak internally. A lot of the information you need is in the rest of the business. So as an example, your marketing team might be running a whole new campaign, and you need to know how much it's going to cost, when they're going to spend it, what currency it's going to be in.
Right.
And they're not super interested in giving you that information. They just want to run their campaign, So you need to build all of these relationships across the business, more so than I'd say in other finance roles where you're maybe backwards looking, you're closing the books or doing the accounts. It's a lot more people led.
Yeah. Is it sort of, I do get that point. It's almost, it feels like you're part of the operation rather than, like you say, almost assessing how the operation's done. Now, I think there's almost two parts there, but you're very much part and parcel of active operations because it's keeping enough money in the business so you don't go bank but also paying things in a sensible way. So is that a sort of a delineation that you would see, that it's more operational than, I don't know, assessment?
Yeah, maybe I'll term it as strategic because another example, if you want to open a new business in overseas, there'll be some planning. Do we have enough money to do that? Do we have to take on more debt, or is it going to be in a different currency? Do we need new policies? Treasury has to have a seat at the table before these type of decisions can be made, and is involved in the planning. Not saying that the rest of finance isn't, but their part comes in once it's live, usually, to make sure that it's all properly accounted for.
Yeah, I think that there's a big difference here, Graham, that the CFO, the finance leader, will have a lot of strategic skills around advising the business about opening into that new country. But the detail that sits behind that in terms of what banks to use, what are the particular restrictions and regulations that we've got to be aware of in this particular territory, can be very, very specialist and can vary in every country on the globe.
Part of my research for this, I looked at a short video with somebody from the Association of Treasurers or something like that. It was something like that. And this lady was, probably of my age or maybe even a bit older. But basically, she had almost like a pad of prompts and a pad of notes that she needed to refer to. And the interviewer also had a notebook of questions. And it's almost as if they're really not used to, like you're doing, getting a question that you're not quite sure what's coming, because it's always like that, not on this podcast. And then, but you're answering it with real knowledge and real understanding, and with a little bit of flair as well. It's almost like that doesn't seem to have been part of the genre.
Yeah, well, I guess it's the stereotype of even just in finance, isn't it? There is a bit of a stereotype, and when it comes to working with consultants or experts or anything like that, you've got to be someone who is good to work with, especially in the startup, scale-up world. There's not that many people there, and you end up doing all sorts of stuff. So you have to be off the cuff and, use the skills that you've got to help them sort of however you can. Where I think some people have made a lot of money confusing people. It's just a fact. And I don't think that, although you can be a very successful consultant doing that, it's not the type of person who I am.
I think that's very well answered, because it's it wasn't supposed to be a trick question, but it's just that there's a sense that shall we say the old guard might be edging out, and you are the new guard, aren't you? If you're going to develop this community, treasurers of tomorrow, that people are attracted to, because there's a sense of community, but there's also a sense of I don't know, protection in a sense, because you're doing this job, but there are external forces that are going to make life either easier or worse, because it's the question about AI, etc. Does this mean that you're going to be less likely to exist or as likely to exist?
I think in terms of AI, I think we will be as likely to exist.
Mm.
However, there are a lot of manual tasks within the Treasury space that it would be great if we could just eliminate, and that would help as well some of the retention in Treasury. One of the challenges that we have is that often Treasury teams are quite small in relation to the whole business. So you might run a FTSE 100 company with five-man Treasury team. So any sort of automation is not going to have a huge, wide impact compared to a wider finance team. So sometimes there's not the budget or the priority to do that. So the junior treasurers, all the treasurers that I meet now, they're just not willing to do that sort of work. And, they won't stand for it like we did. I mean, one of the tasks I had at P&G, I had to, on my first job, the coupons you get in Sainsbury's for your fairy liquid, whatever. I had to post the coupon journal, which is just thousands of lines of 10 pence coupons. It's like, they just won't do stuff like that.
But that sounds like the perfect sort of journal entry to somehow manage to automate. There should be systems that do that without the need to manually post journals.
Hopefully, no one's doing that now.
But I mean, first of all, you're not that old. You just had a baby and so forth. And I'm saying just. How old is your baby now?
He's 18 months.
Oh, I was just going to say he's 18. That crikey, that grown up quick. But 18 months might feel like he's 18 every now and again. But that's good. But the point being is you're still a young lady, and so from that point of view. But these, shall we say, entry level individuals have taken to, I'm not doing that. This is not my job. Is that something that you welcome in them, or is that something that can be molded and to enable them to be more, shall we say, flexible as they move forward, because they're going to have to be, aren't they?
Yes, I mean, I would definitely encourage that. I think, but if they find solutions, I'm not going to do that. It's we can do that better. And I would say I've been fortunate, but obviously I've hired those people. So I've found people who are, who have the technical ability way beyond my own to automate something, to find a solution, a cost-effective solution, say, to doing those tasks. And no one wants to do it.
Those treasurers of tomorrow, you can see there's a different mindset. They don't want to do this stuff. But in terms of community for them, is there a big gap at the moment that there's nothing there really for them to network with each other?
I would say yes. Especially the youngsters, they don't have the opportunity to meet their peers. I think I always advocate for doing qualifications. Your professional qualifications, they're so important. I mean, I've got ACCA and ACT, but the difference between them is with ACCA and the accountancy studies, you study a lot of the time in a classroom with a group. So you do meet the people who you will continue on your career path with. And in Treasury, it's not deep enough year on year to warrant that sort of setup. So they're often, you're studying on your own, you're doing it on your own, and you don't get the chance to bounce ideas around. And I think that's where we can go hand in hand. We can support people who want to study. That's great. But then even if you don't, you should still be able to meet your peers and the people who you go through your career with them.
You're developing as a business. You've selected relatively young companies as your initial target audience. Why?
I think for me, that's where it's most exciting, where I can have the biggest impact in the shortest amount of time compared to, there is a lot of opportunities in big companies, but they're very long-term projects, lots of red tape, and I just don't have the headspace for it at the minute, I don't think.
Is that one of the reasons you left big corporate, the red tape?
Definitely. When everyone knows it's a good idea, but there's so many political things in the way before you can go ahead and implement it.
That's, I've got to say, that resonates with me. And it's a lot easier to make them. I've made loads of mistakes. I really have. Some of them are quite costly, but basically, and some with people, some with money, some with business ideas. But I still keep coming back because I'm really enthusiastic about what I'm doing. And now I'm getting to the point where I could retire, might do, probably won't. Because I feel so, I don't know, enthused by the way in which AI in particular is affecting marketing in my space. And I want to do something about that potentially creates some value for other people and as well as enjoying it. And bringing on new people into the business and so forth. So that's driving me probably beyond when I should give up. But Kevin will probably kick me out before long. He'll be saying, Graham, go and be a treasurer. I said, nope, I'm going to stop now. I'm going to give up. I can't possibly do it.
Hey, Graham, we've got 500 podcasts to get to. You're not quitting before we do 500.
No, that's true. That's true. 501 might not be there, but 500 might be. But no, seriously. You obviously, you've obviously got this sense about you've moved out of corporate into your own this market. It must excite you because like I think you said this earlier. They're all different. Worked for Lego years ago, and it's a new toy every day. That's what we used to say about Lego bricks, and effectively, it's a new toy every day. You go into a new company in your field. Mm. They're all different, so they have different requirements of your skills, Jen.
Mm. Yeah, they are. However, there's fundamental pillars of Treasury that you can make sure that to set them up in a way that is sustainable, that will help them grow as a business, and good, solid processes that anyone. This is what I try and set up. You could have a treasurer running these, say, FX hedging. Or you could have a finance assistant running it because it's a really well-established, well-understood process. But to go back to something that you said in terms of the influence that you have in these companies, the scary part is that when you're the expert, they take whatever you say at face value. Mm-hmm. That risk is to have that sort of trust on you when this company is growing and developing, and the recommendations you're making are, that's all of their cash. So what I'm suggesting, say, is to de-risk that. So I assume you're aware that one of the big banks collapsed last year, Silicon Valley Bank. And a lot of the type of customers that I work with had a lot of money in that bank. Mm-hmm. And that they were never a well-rated bank. Everyone knew that, but not everyone knew it because the people who banked with them didn't know. And it's those sort of gaps that it's really easy to add value, where you say, you go and you have a look, where's their cash? Straight away, let's get a new bank. Let's just split it in half. So even if maybe Lloyd's doesn't collapse, but maybe you lose your PIN reader and you can't log in for 3 days, that doesn't mean your whole business has to shut down. It's easy things like that.
When the leader of that bank spent a heck of a lot of money on trivial things like investing in the Democrats, that then basically that should have been a red flag to anybody who's got a business. A loser political party with a loser bank leader giving him money. But anyway, I mean, that's let's face it, that's my view. It's maybe not yours, but at the end of the day, yes, a lot of people, emerging businesses did lose their shirt with that bank. Is it likely to happen over here?
I mean, yeah, it could happen to any of the banks. Obviously they are regulated, but it's about planning for these things. COVID was huge for treasurers, and all the actions that we had to take during that time because it was so uncertain. And if you set up good processes now, you're covered, for that. The things that we put in place in my role then, they made millions of pounds off that. That was not the aim, but that protected the business in case something really bad happened. And that's what it's all about. It's planning for these unforeseen events.
But Graham, we have seen a bank over here collapse. It's probably not in very recent memory, but do you remember Northern Rock?
Of course I do, yeah. Used
Yeah.
to be a client
Yeah.
years ago.
I used to know the director of risk in Northern Rock very well. And I remember just after the collapse saying to him, bet you didn't have government cause create run on the bank on your risk register. And his answer was interesting. Oh, actually, we did. We just never thought it would happen.
Amazing. It was a heck of a time. And you two coming from that area, I had an overlap because of previous job that I had. But basically, I think in managing cash, we all know that from a business point of view, you have to manage your cash. Otherwise, you've nothing to pay people or yourself or anybody else with, and your business is done. It depends, regardless of what's in the pipeline, what stock you have, the whole thing, you're done. So that central part of what you do couldn't be more important, could it?
No, exactly that. And it's the place to add most value quickly.
Yeah.
Especially, at the moment, interest rates are great. Are you taking advantage of that? Suddenly, Treasury is a bit of a profit center in a lot of companies.
Yeah.
Certainly in the last place I worked, very quickly we're making more money than some other products.
Yeah, that's it. A couple of years ago, when you were lucky if you got 0.5% on a business deposit account, it was kind of, well, what's the point? We might as well leave this extra 10 grand in a current account. Now, it makes sense to move the 10 grand you've got hanging around to pay the next quarterly VAT bill or the next annual corporation tax bill, move it under deposit somewhere. Suddenly it does make very much sense to do that.
I probably have the wrong idea about cash, Jen. I think I've always I work for a credit referencing company, and I didn't take credit. I basically, I work for a big cigarette company, and for a fair amount of time, I didn't smoke. So basically, until it became overwhelming, I did smoke. But basically, so I suppose I'm an anti-establishment figure anyway. But I guess what I'm trying to drive at is that Treasury itself is so core to a business that, I mean, I guess what your main benefit to a business is that you can keep it going for the longer term. But for me, I would rather pay a debt quickly and done. So I have certain financial arrangements with other people where I'm prepaying for certain things because I'm getting a much better rate. Now, I don't know whether that's kind of Treasury sort of mentality, but for me, I know I'm putting cash out before I need to, but I'm getting a much better rate for the buying price. So I'm like, I'd rather settle things quickly. So in my head, I don't have any debt. As long as the cash is there. If I didn't have the cash there, I wouldn't be doing that. But I guess as long as the cash is there. But is that a daft idea, or should I be doing something different?
No, I think if you get a discount to pay early, then and that discount percentage is higher than your interest, it makes a lot of sense. I think there's other cases where we call it working capital, where if you're paying out before you get the money in, and that's causing a problem, then maybe you'd think twice. I mean, I spent a long time working in the law industry, and they have this big problem called lockup. So on average, when someone takes out some law advice, they don't pay for it for over 200 days. And that's not that they shouldn't pay for 200 days. They just don't. And in a lot of the law, this industry is centered around how are they going to fund those 200 days where they're waiting for the money. And in that case, maybe you wouldn't be paying people early.
No.
But in a lot of law firms as well, they're handling large chunks of client money in doing transactions. And I guess another challenge is that they can't get client money mixed up with the law firm's money.
Yeah. Yeah. My daughter was, I think in your neck of the woods yesterday, I think, she works for a big law firm on a case that she tells me it might even change relevant law. So it's quite an important case. But I hadn't really figured out that they have to wait so long to get paid, because presumably she's getting paid her money
Mm.
every month and so forth. So they have to presumably manage that cash really, really smartly.
Mm. Yeah, that's a big part of the job of a treasurer. And a lot of them have debt facilities to fund that time period.
Right.
But what Kevin said, there's this whole other element of treasury. If you do have client monies, if you buy a house and you pay your house deposit to your lawyers before your house goes through, they have to look after that. They can't use it. There's a lot of laws around it. And say I used to work in a stockbroker. That's the same. You fund your account. We can move that a little bit. We can do stuff with that, but not too much.
Yeah.
And it's learning all those different rules, and fitting into. That's why it's kind of interesting as well. You move between different industries, as I have, and you get to experience all those different conditions. But there's still some. I don't want to use the word creativity, but there we go. To make the most out of that cash.
It's not a dirty word. I mean, maybe in Kevin's world it is, but I mean, as it happens, it isn't. He's a very creative finance person, so I'm sure he'll be able to assist when it comes to online training and so forth, and doing all that kind of thing, because you're doing it yourself in your own life, Kevin. Even though you're wearing, is that one of those fancy polo shirts that you're wearing?
My sponsor's logo, Graham. You've spotted it.
Well, yeah, he's becoming more and more posh, but it's like cut chalk and cheese on this, Jen. I mean, I should really be from Sunderland, and he's from sort of posh Newcastle. So,
but Jen, we're the next 100 Days podcast. Now, take yourself back to that point that you made the decision that you're going to go out on your own. 100 days, first 100 days. Looking back, what advice would you give anybody into there?
I would say that's quite a hard question. I would say have your pitch ready. I found it quite hard to explain what I was trying to do because I didn't have it clear in my own head. So I think I lost out on some opportunities by not being able to articulate exactly my services and what I wanted to offer. And maybe practice on your husband, because I had to explain to him, and he was very surprised by my new revelation. And I'd say, and this is some advice that you gave me, Kevin, in the sense of don't, a lot of the stuff you need to do, you can do yourself. You don't need to. I spent a lot of money in the early times, thinking I could advertise and all those sort of things. You have everything you need internally. There's platforms to share your knowledge, to share your services, like LinkedIn and website, that you can do really quickly and almost for free, and leverage those.
Mm.
And also you've got time. There's no big rush. You don't have to do everything in the first 100 days.
No, you don't. But it does help to have some sort of idea of where you're going. And if you can say to yourself that, and this is where I would intervene when it comes to things like websites, and in particular websites and your offer, because people come to me in my particular business and say, can you find me affluent people? And yeah, I can. Here's a list. But what are you going to say to them? And it's that bit that they kind of fall down on. A lot of people say, oh, can you get me some leads? I'm thinking, wow, what are you going to do with them? And, and it's that kind of, I've got this crazy rubbish plan of how I'm dealing with that information. And so, well, if you're going to do this, do it in this particular way. And that's how I try and structure my offer to people. But in your case, you start off on if I was just to click on Treasury Edge here, first of all, I like it. It's kind of got Treasury in white and Edge in, I would say that's pink, maybe. I don't know if it's red or pink. I think it might be pink. But that might be the feminine new. I don't know. Maybe that's the thing. But one of the things that I'm not sure yet whether I like it or not. But one of the things you do is you say we are not. So you're making it really clear to people what you don't do, but you then make it clear on the other side as to what you do. And I'm not quite sure whether or not I 100% like that at this stage, but it does make it clear what you do. And I do like that. So if somebody comes to your website and they're saying, Jen is a treasury expert, by trade, who believes that all businesses, no matter how small, deserve to have well managed cash and banking.
Mm.
Okay, I'm getting it. I'm getting it. And then but okay, well, what can I do with Jen? And then she goes into the details. So there's a lot to praise you on the website, that's for sure. And your headline is "Get Your House in Order." Is that what you find your business, the people who turn up, really don't have their house in order?
Mm. Um, yeah, I guess it's a lot of the size companies that I work with, especially if they are pre-profit,
Mm,
they usually get interested in Treasury between their Series A funding and their Series B.
mm,
So it's how to make your cash last longer for Series B and get ready for that next big investment, get everything in place. So when you get that cash in, you can invest it, you're making the most out of it.
yeah.
I mean, that's where the Get the House in Order came from. I mean, what do you think of that as a tagline?
Well, it's not a tagline. First of all, it's a headline, and
Yeah.
what I would do is I do something slightly different there. But I would if that's the right headline, use it. But I would definitely have a sub headline, and you've kind of got the sub headline in the sense of I don't do this, I do that. Now, the point of the sub headline is to move you from that headline into the rest of the rest of the copy. It's a bit like saying headline says I'll pay attention. So does that say I pay attention? I think it probably does. Get your house in order, but I'm not 100% sure. Are you offering cleaning services, or are you actually, smacking the children around the head for being naughty? It's that kind of. You've got an 18-year-old. You know how it is. I mean, and then the sub headline is I'll engage deeper with you, and I think that bit is maybe where you're going with I'm not.
Mm.
But bringing in negatives at that stage, maybe, well, okay, but I think you could reverse that and be very positive about what you do. So I would be looking at those two things, and just test different things and see which one works best. But there are other things that you can get into. But for me, I do like your website. I think that to say you're a new business, you've made a really good stab at it. But as a treasurer, um, you're not a bad marketer, Jen. You've done all right. I mean, you've started. You've got yourself out of corporate. Well done. You get the badge.
Mm.
It's probably one of those polo shirts that Kevin's wearing.
I'm not there yet.
You're not there. No. You soon will be. But I think you've been a fascinating guest here on the next 100 Days podcast. Thank you.
So, Graham, another interesting corporate escape story.
Yeah, I think Jen's going to do really, really well. I mean, she obviously knows her stuff. She's got a calmness about her that is engaging, and I think she probably has the answer to most people's inquiries. So basically, if you're going to go along to have a conversation with her, you know, go to her website and leave a message, then you're going to find out things about your business that you probably want to know. And the point is, with cash, you want to know it now, because you don't want to go out of business by not managing your cash. So here's somebody that can help you and has got real experience doing that for lots of businesses. And so, yeah, I think she'll do really well.
And it's another example, Graham. We've come across a few of them recently where fractional services are really the thing of the moment.
Yeah.
Companies, as they're growing, can't afford full-time people to do things, but they still need the service. And there's Treasury is yet another one of them.
Mm. I think I think she made a good case for the post-AI future. I love the fact that she's trying to help other people and bring a community of people together, because I think that's really going to help her industry. There is a future for this. There's no question about that, because I mean, I might have overstepped by saying it's more of an operational role, but I think it is in a way. It's running the business.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a big issue though, Graham. Companies are finding it harder and harder to fundraise. The funds aren't around the way they were. They therefore need to make the cash runway last longer. be used more efficiently. Every penny counts. So yes, a lot of Treasury is operational, but it's got a real strategic fit into the future of the business.
Yeah, I honestly, it's a pivotal part of certainly a startup business because, you know, we've dealt with this elsewhere in other podcasts, and I've certainly dealt with it in with certain client engagements. But you know, when you're throwing money at a relatively young company, often they're not old folk doing it. Now they might have NEDs, they might have older people somewhere in the background, but the truth is they're usually quite young and probably inexperienced. So they desperately need somebody who's going to put the foot on the ball and make sure that they are going to last longer than otherwise they would do if they have a stupidly high burn rate of cash.
Absolutely. So lots of future.
Yeah. Well, I wish Jen well, and if you want to get in touch with Jennifer Pearson, then go to treasuryedge.co.uk. Well, today, Kevin, I've been Graham Arrowsmith.
I've been Kevin Appleby. Goodbye.
Goodbye.